Hi everybody. Welcome to mmlearn.org. I'm Erin Bonito. I am the founder and lead coach for Gemini Consulting and the Gemini Life Enrichment Institute for Dementia. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this topic came to be. In my work as a dementia coach, I work in assisted living centers and nursing homes. I work in retirement communities and memory care settings. And very often, we know that the pastor, the priest, the rabbi, that's the person that can provide a certain comfort that very few of us can provide. And I think the struggle for the pastor or the priest or the rabbi in some instances with some residents with dementia is how do we go beyond just visiting and in fact actually truly genuinely connecting with a parishioner who has dementia. So that will be our focus today, is how do we truly connect with that person. We will cover 4 topics. The topics will be dementia definitions and quick facts, the language of dementia, creating connections, and finally, how can we adapt a traditional religious service to be something more relatable for the person with dementia, and we'll be calling that the Amazing Grace group. A few quick definitions for those of you who are not familiar with dementia and its definitions. Dementia itself is just an umbrella term for a cluster of symptoms. So it's important not to think of dementia as a disease, but really just a term for a cluster of symptoms. The symptoms can be things like problems with memory and problems with judgment, or problems with memory and problems with language, or problems with decision making. There are quite a few different conditions that cause dementia. I think the one that folks are familiar with the most, of course, is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is believed to be responsible for somewhere between 60 and 80% of all cases of dementia. So that's extraordinary. When you think about the typical retirement living campus, and you think about the number of folks who have dementia, and then you consider that 60 to 80% of those people with dementia may have it because of this progressive, fatal disease called Alzheimer's disease. Often, dementia is caused by a vascular dementia. This might be the dementia caused, for instance, after a stroke. And increasingly, it's believed that a lot of dementias are, in fact, a mixed dementia. So there's an Alzheimer's component and a vascular component going on. The numbers are absolutely staggering. When you think about Alzheimer's disease in the United States, currently 5.4 million people in America have Alzheimer's disease. And this number is going to skyrocket as baby boomers age. The number, though, 5.4 million, to me, it's hard to wrap my head around it. What does 5.4 million really mean? A number that hits me a little harder is this number, that 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. That number just floors me. 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 has Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. When we look at people over age 85, 43% of people in America over age 85 have Alzheimer's disease. So if you are a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, you might be asking yourself, how many of your parishioners are over the age of 65? How many of your parishioners have parents over the age of 65? Perhaps you're a chaplain in a retirement community where nearly everyone is over 65. Alzheimer's disease has hit your ministry, and it will only hit it harder. And again, you're the person that's asked to provide comfort and provide solace and perhaps provide a guiding light through this terrible thing called Alzheimer's disease. So how do we connect? How do we do it? I should let you know, I'll back up just for a moment and say before we connect, it might be important for us to know what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and traditional age-associated memory impairment. You know, the sort of the senior moments that we all get. The big hallmark, I would say, the difference between Alzheimer's disease and normal memory-related changes is that in Alzheimer's disease, the person is going to forget, in most cases, the whole experience. They're absolutely going to forget the whole experience. So for instance, let's say that my dad has Alzheimer's disease, and I take my dad out for lunch at his favorite place. We go to this little cafe in Rockville, Minnesota, where the burgers are greasy and the fries are good. And we go there, and we really have a wonderful time. If my dad has Alzheimer's disease, very shortly after that, he may forget entirely that we ever went to that favorite roadside cafe. Absolutely no recognition of it. But in reality, thank goodness, I'm very blessed. My dad doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. So my dad may forget exactly what we ordered that day. He may forget what day we went. He may forget whether we were there for a long time or a short time. But he'll remember that we went to the cafe. He'll remember that we had a nice time together. He may just forget some small parts of that experience. That's one of the big differences between Alzheimer's disease and age-associated memory impairment, is this difference between forgetting a whole experience and forgetting just part of an experience. The other key thing I ask folks to think about is that largely, for most of us, our memories are joggable. If I can jog my dad's memory and say, Dad, remember we went on Friday and it was the fish special, it was all you could eat fish. If I can jog his memory, that's just an age-associated memory moment there. That's not a big concern. But if my dad digs in his heels and says, really, we didn't go there, I don't know what you're talking about, then that's a sign that it may be Alzheimer's disease. Other indications that a person may have Alzheimer's, or I should say other courses that the disease tends to follow, is that gradually they're unable to follow directions. Gradually the person is unable to use notes. Gradually the person is unable to care for themselves. So as a clergy person, it's important, I think, to have a basic concept of what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease, which is progressive and devastating, and memory changes, which are irritating for sure, but not life-changing. So how do we connect during a visit? What will we see during a visit? If I am a pastor or a priest or a rabbi and I come to visit my parishioner with dementia, right away I'm probably going to notice the severe impairment to short-term memory that I just talked about. But I'm also going to notice this, what we call the backward erosion of long-term memory. For the person with Alzheimer's disease, while their short-term memory is really, really devastated very early on in the disease, the way long-term memory is affected is a little bit different. Long-term memory tends to be erased in a backwards fashion. The last 5 years may be fuzzy. The last 10 years may be fuzzy. The last 20 years may be fuzzy. And in that backward erosion, the person oftentimes gets stuck, maybe or plateaued, believing that they are a young or a middle-aged adult. So this person who, for lack of a better word, has time traveled, has the concerns of a young or a middle-aged adult. So for us visiting, it's important for us to know that our exact identity and our exact relationship may be very, very fuzzy to the person. They may not know exactly who we are, and they may not know exactly our relationship with them. It's also important for us to know that we shouldn't be quizzing the person or assuming that they understand things. Too often, visitors in a very genial and very friendly way lapse into a rhythm of quizzing the person. They might say, you know me, come on, we've known each other for 20 years, or it's me, Pastor Anderson, you remember me, come on, what's the name of the church you go to? You've gone there for 20 years, you know it, I know you know the name of our church. That sort of quizzing is always, I know it comes from a place of very good intentions, but for the person with dementia, it's very, very upsetting. It's very, very frustrating. And while we may not see the effects right there in the visit, I promise you, we will see the effects after the visit, of feeling embarrassed, of feeling ashamed, of feeling frightened that they don't know this important information. So understanding that our relationship may be fuzzy, and understanding that even gentle quizzing isn't the way to go. Those are a couple of important implications for us. Another thing that we will notice during a visit for the person with dementia is that both speaking words and understanding words is impaired. It's been estimated, a study came out recently, that suggests that even in early Alzheimer's disease, the person may not be translating, meaning their brain is not understanding, as many as 1 in every 4 words that we speak. So if you think about this, and we're speaking to the person, hello there, it's so good to see you. We haven't seen each other for such a long time. How have you been? Have you been feeling well? How many words is that? That's an awful lot of words. And if the person with dementia didn't translate 1 in every 4 of those words, what message did they get? Midway through the disease, if they didn't translate 1 in every 3 of those words, how much of the message did they get? Later in the disease, if they didn't translate as many as 1 in every 2 of those words, how much of the message did they get? So an implication for us is that we need to be speaking very slowly, using very simple words and very simple phrases. Another thing to understand is that in social situations, the person may cover very, very well and not let on that they're not understanding these things. As we speak slowly or speak quickly and fast and ask a lot of questions, I don't know any person with dementia who's going to raise their hand and say, whoa, slow down for a moment. I think my translator isn't working, and could you speak a little more slowly and clearly so I can get that message? They're not going to do that. They're going to nod and uh-huh and nod and uh-huh, giving the visitor the impression that there's a lot of understanding when in fact there may be less understanding than we believe. So, how do we use the language of dementia to truly, truly connect during our visit? Let me show you a couple of examples. I'd like to show you how our everyday communication patterns may not work. And I'm going to invite Tracy to join us. Thank you, Tracy. Tracy is going to portray a person with an Alzheimer's type dementia. Perhaps she lives in an assisted living, or perhaps she lives in a memory care center, and I'm her pastor. I'm Pastor Benito, and I've come to visit. Well, good morning, Tracy. Hello, dear. It's good to see you. I was hoping I would come by here and catch you right after breakfast. Are you feeling well, Tracy? Are you feeling well? Tracy, it's me, Pastor Bonito. You know me. We've gone to church together for an awful long time, Tracy. I don't know. Who are you? Tracy, you know me, Pastor Bonito at Peace Lutheran Church. You've served coffee there for more years than I can remember. We've missed you at church. You're bringing me coffee? Well, I can bring you some coffee, but I just came to visit for a little bit. Maybe we can put on the call bell and I can ask one of the nurses to bring us some coffee. I don't know if they have it ready right now. I don't need a nurse. So, in this moment, what are all the things that I did poorly? I had very, very little expression. My face was flat. It wasn't particularly animated. I used an awful lot of questions. My vocal quality was, in trying to be gentle and kind to her, my vocal quality actually was a little bit weak. It wasn't a confident vocal quality. It wasn't something she could pick up and listen to. she was left absolutely uncertain about my identity and uncertain about my purpose. So the response for her, where she's left at, is that she's unfocused, she may be confused, she may withdraw a bit from me, she may be disinterested, she may become restless, because to the extent that she's uncomfortable in our interaction, she doesn't want to take part in it. So she will shut down, as any of us would do. So let's look at a different way that we can do this. And I think a good first tip is to be sure to introduce ourselves to the person as if it's the very, very first time that we've met, because it's probably going to feel that way to the person. This, to me, is really where the connection begins. So what does it look like? You must be Tracy.
I am.
Tracy, I'm Pastor Bonito.
You're a pastor.
Pastor Bonito. I know your daughter, Judy. I know your oldest daughter, Judy. Judy. You and Judy and the boys have gone to Peace Lutheran for a real long time.
We go to church.
Yes, you do. You don't always sit in the front pew. Your family has been a little more of the middle pew kind of folks. It's so good to see you.
Do you know Judy?
I do. I know her well. So, what were the things that we did to make this different? In terms of introducing yourself to the person, what I suggest to folks is a 4-step way of doing this. Now, certainly you can vary this, and you're going to vary this depending on the person's stage of dementia and depending on the nature of your relationship. But let me break down what we just did. The first thing that I did was I was sure to get low. You notice when I come and greet her in this way, who's in control here? You know I am. Even if I'm a friendly presence and patting her on the shoulder and maybe trying to reassure a little bit or leaning down and taking her hand, I'm still very, very much in control here. And if she doesn't have words and memory to understand exactly who I am and why I'm here, she needs something more than me just standing over her. She needs, perhaps, this. Look at you. Now, she can see my face. She can see my expressions. She can see me offer a handshake. All of these go around the damaged language centers of the brain and get right into the part of her brain that's still alive and well and working just fine. Now, if you're not a person who can, well, most of us can squat down, right? It's the getting up that's the problem. So if you're not a person who is confident that you can get up, and increasingly with each passing year, that's my situation, you don't need to squat down quite like that. Just be sure that you get a chair right away. So that's step one. It's getting low, using a universal gesture, sparkling. What is step two? Step two is you must be. You must be Tracy.
I am.
We say you must be because if I come right to Tracy and I say, "Hi Tracy, how are you?" And if she doesn't know for sure who I am, it's unsettling. It's very disarming. So I come at it in this more gingerly fashion. You must be Tracy.
I am.
Our third step is to describe who we are in very, very simple terms. I'm Pastor Bonito. I'm the pastor at Peace Lutheran Church.
You're a pastor.
I sure am. Now, if the name Peace Lutheran Church doesn't help, I might use something different. I might say, I'm Pastor Bonito. I know your daughter, Judy. You notice, either way, it's not just my name, but it's a context for who am I. Finally, the fourth step is a simple statement. We define a simple statement usually as 7 words or less. Now, you may need to vary this either more or less depending on where the person is at in their disease process. But a simple statement allows their damaged translators in their brain to take in the message, translate it, process it, and get a chance for it to come back out. A simple statement is not a question. So a simple statement would look like this. I came to visit you today.
I like visit.
It's good to see you. So you notice by doing these 4 steps, we minimize the chance that the person is going to be shocked or distrusting, and we greatly increase the chance that they're going to really genuinely connect with us. As the visit progresses, what are some skills that I should be using? Of course, I should be staying below eye level. I should continue to use my simple statements. And to the extent that it's possible, now, not all of us are super animated folks, but to the extent that it's possible, I should do what I can to use a little bit of an exaggerated facial expression, maybe exaggerated gestures. I want my facial expressions and my gestures and my body to be very, very, very clear. I use my sparkly face. Finally, I wanted to mention something called the 7 and 7 rule. The 7 and 7 rule is a little trick that I use, which suggests to me that after I've said my 7-word simple statement, I may pause as long as 7 seconds, or maybe longer, to let that person get a response back. So, putting all these skills together, what does that look like? Tracy, it is the 2nd Sunday in Advent. Oh, let me tell you about the church. The women have decorated it.
Are there flowers there?
There are cream-colored poinsettias. There are red poinsettias.
Don't let the cats eat those. They're poisonous.
Isn't that the truth? We don't have any cats running around church that I know of. The men brought in the tall ladders. They strung up our new banners.
So many colors.
It's beautiful. This year they used a deep, deep purple and cream.
Oh, purple's beautiful.
Each banner has one of the Advent candles.
So pretty.
You would be very, very thrilled to see how beautiful the church is.
Sounds so pretty. You're pretty.
Oh, thank you. So you notice in this way, my thoughts were very, very simple. They were very concrete. They were very slow. And I didn't ask any questions. I said things like, you would be so pleased to see the church. The church looks so beautiful. What are some other tips? Some other tips for us are to, of course, in all situations, enter the person's reality. Enter the person's reality. If she had suggested to me that she knows that her mom was the person who decorated the church, I would go right along with that and say how wonderful. Your mom does such good work. It's important for us to find a quiet place free of distractions. If we're sitting in quite a busy area, there's going to be very little odds that the person with Alzheimer's disease can focus. I suggest it this way. The person with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia can really be just on one channel at a time, and we need to pick that channel carefully. And if we want the channel to be us, there can't be people visiting nearby at other tables. There can't be people hustling by in the halls. We really need to find that quiet place free of distractions. And I think it's also important for us to find a very well-lit place to visit. As folks age, their eyes take in less and less light than younger folks. And sometimes just being in a poorly lit room can make or break a visit because it makes the person drowsy for one thing, but they can't make out our facial expressions nearly as well. Finally, if you have it, wear your clerical attire. In most cases, this is going to be a fantastic and concrete cue to help the person know immediately who you are and what your relationship might be. So these are some of the skills and some of the standards for connecting during your visit. Now, how do we create really, really powerful connections? How do we go beyond just talking? It's important to know that just having a visit, a talking type of visit, increasingly will be difficult for the person with dementia. And increasingly it will be difficult because they are not translating the words that we are saying, and they may not be able to express or get out the words that they would like to express or get out. So I think it's important for pastors and priests and rabbis and other clergy to have a sense or a knowledge of what are some of the strengths that last long into Alzheimer's disease. Knowing these strengths will give us a few tricks for tapping into some familiar religious and spiritual rituals. Our hands remember. Hands are tapped into what's called procedural memories. Procedural memories are stored, it's believed they're stored far in the hindbrain, if you will. They're stored way back here, a place that Alzheimer's disease doesn't get to very quickly. So oftentimes when we can't communicate through visiting orally, we can tap into memories by just placing something in someone's hand. Maybe it's a worn, very well used, familiar family Bible. And rather than going at this like, as I'm going to do now, rather than saying something like this, do you remember your Bible? Do you want to look up a verse for me? That leaves her bewildered. Do you want to look at your Bible? Do you want to read a verse? Do you want to read such and such? Do you want to? Will almost always be answered no, or there'll be no answer at all. So what I might do is something like this.
My mom wrote my name here.
Your mother wrote your name. Maybe it was your first confirmation.
I like the pictures. And the colors are pretty.
What an absolutely beautiful Bible. I can see you've used it.
Yes, you're not supposed to write in books, but I like to write in this one.
Well, if there's a book to write in, Tracy, I think this might be the one.
I underlined these. Do you know those verses?
I do. This is from Numbers 27. If a man dies and has no son, then you shall cause his inheritance to pass to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. And if his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his kinsmen. I wonder if you were thinking about money.
Do you know my brother?
Your brother Arnold. I've met him several times. You see, as we visited here, it started with just placing the book right in her hands. Her hands felt it. Her hands followed the writing. When she saw something that was important to her but was too small for her to read, I read it very slowly and very clearly. You notice that I didn't ask any questions at all, even though we're pulling out in this way. We're using her hands, we're using her procedural memories to pull out deeply stored long-term memories. Every religion, every faith probably has its icons, its things that hands will remember. It might be rosary beads. It might be lighting a menorah or placing on a prayer shawl. Come to your visit prepared. Bring something tangible in your hands that will be familiar to place in the person's hands. Another strength that lasts long into Alzheimer's disease is what we call automatic responses. Automatic responses are things that we did or said so many times that they got stored more like a program, if you will, almost like a computer program than a traditional episodic memory. So what is the most common and heartfelt automatic type response there is? Well, of course, it's singing. Our voices remember the things that we sang. If we come prepared in our visit to sing hymns with our parishioner, here are some tips for singing those hymns. It's important, I think, well, I can just say in my experience. In my experience is that we pick the first verse of familiar hymns and just sing the first verses over and over and over. The first time the person may be a little bit tentative. The second time they may sing it with a little bit more conviction. By the third time or the fourth time they're singing it with an awful lot of heart and an awful lot of beauty. We can help that along by singing with expression ourselves, using our very bright face and maybe over-enunciating in such a way that they really can follow it. We may sing a little bit more slowly than normal. We may sing in a little bit lower pitch than normal. And importantly, something that I would like to hammer home is that singing will be much more successful with the person who has dementia if they are not holding a hymnal or they are not holding sheet music. Invariably, what you see when folks are given a hymnal or sheet music is that hymnal or a sheet music becomes the number one distraction. Their hands know that they are supposed to do something with this piece of paper. So if we're singing along and they have sheet music, it may be they've got it upside down, or they're folding it, or they're looking over at their neighbors to see what to do with it. Remember, the Alzheimer's brain can just be on one channel, and we'd much rather have it be on the singing channel than the what should I do with this piece of paper channel. You may find some people with exceptions, but by and large, folks have much more success and enjoyment with singing when there's no hymnal or no sheet music. If you are not a confident singer, and I include myself 1,000% in that category, there is a wonderful resource called Nancy Pitkin's Favorite Hymns and Spirituals. It's a CD. You can purchase it through Seabay Game Company, and you see that on the slide here. Nancy Pitkin sings in a voice that has quite a low pitch. It's sung slowly. It's sung very, very clearly with a minimum of instrumentation. It's one I've used for an awful lot of years to extraordinary results. When you're singing old familiar hymns, think to yourself, what did this person sing when they were young? What did this person sing when they were a child? What did this person hear their parents singing? You see some hymns suggested here on the slide for Christian parishioners, things like Holy, 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 or What a Friend We Have in Jesus. You might consider singing Jesus Loves Me, or This Little Light of Mine. Those are the songs that they sang in Sunday school and may have helped their kids sing in Sunday school. If you have one hymn to sing, my experience has been that it's Amazing Grace. Now, just to show you that anyone can successfully have a singing moment, I'm going to torture our in-room audience and perhaps torture you online with my own singing, because people are just not confident in many cases. They feel they can't sing, but really anyone can be successful with this. Tracy, last Sunday, my very favorite hymn was included in service. It was Amazing Grace.
Oh, that's a beautiful song.
Everyone sang along. I'd love to sing it with you.
I like singing.
You'll have to help me. God gave me a few talents. Singing wasn't one of them. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Oh, Tracy, you have a beautiful voice. Now, in a real visit, if she had sung so clearly and beautifully like that, I would have said, let's sing it again. And let's sing it again. And we might have just sung that first verse together 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times. Singing is a way to remove ourselves from the traditional sort of visiting that very oftentimes doesn't work, and move us towards something where we really can genuinely connect with the person and help them connect with the rituals that bring such comfort. Reciting and reading familiar passages might be a way to connect with our person. Some of the similar standards apply. Reading or reciting the passage more than once, reading it with expression, reading it a bit more slowly. Of course, using traditional versions, not the contemporary versions. Now, I just got done saying that it's a poor idea to have sheet music and hymnals. I'm going to reverse my stance this time and say my experience has been that with something like reading and reading together, and it's assuming that it's on a one-to-one basis like this, we can very carefully use large print. Now I'm showing you on the slide traditional sort of print. This is a sort of print that the person may not be able to see well and certainly won't be able to focus on. But with this size of print, we increase the odds that the person would be able to read. And interestingly, the ability to read, again, that's something that comes more from the back parts of our brain and has a few different connections than traditional speaking. So the person who has trouble speaking may still be able to read because it's using different channels of the brain. Tracy? Maybe you can read this with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in the green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. You notice in reading that together, it gave her a chance to do something she's done for many, many years and helped her connect. The same could be true of prayer. Perhaps a sheet is helpful for a prayer, but perhaps a sheet isn't helpful for a prayer. You'll find out in your visit which works the best for prayer. The idea is, how can we keep them engaged with the experience and not just a passive recipient of our visiting with them? Tracy, I'll thank you and allow you to move back. Another way to connect is by coming prepared to share a simple story. Again, when sharing that simple story, think of the things that were very, very familiar to the person when they were very young or when they were a child, or stories that they shared with their children. It might be stories like the prodigal son, or David and Goliath, or Noah's Ark. To help them focus in on this story, I suggest bringing a single, very large, full page size illustration. Not a small book, not a book with a whole lot of pictures, but a large single illustration. And for that large single illustration, like you see here, Noah's Ark, rather than asking questions, we place that illustration in their hands and we say things like, look at that. This is a really interesting picture. Noah's Ark. We just use simple statements like that, and we just let them rest with the person. And we'll know if the person nods or answers back or comments on the picture. Finally, I know some pastors and priests and rabbis are in the position of leading a religious service for people with Alzheimer's disease. It's not something you may have been trained for in the seminary. And if we lead a service in a traditional way by bringing a whole lot of people all together and going through a service, too often what you see is people who just can't focus. Folks who nod off during the service. Folks who push their wheelchairs back. Folks who perhaps look all around and really don't have a sense that they're at a religious service. So I'd like to share a Christian service that we've adapted for in many of the communities that I've worked in, and I'm sure communities all over America have similar sorts of adaptations. But we call ours the Amazing Grace Group. And in the Amazing Grace Group, we limit the group to perhaps 4 to 6 persons with moderate to advanced dementia. We find a place that's quiet. We find a place that's well lit. In my situation, since I'm not a particularly confident singer, I bring my CD player and my Nancy Pitkin sing-along CD, and I will put it on Amazing Grace, and I will repeat that song about 6 times. And while Nancy Pitkin is singing, I will be down below eye level, going to each person in turn, holding their hands, and singing right to them the way that you saw me just singing to Tracy. But I have Nancy for backup, of course. I go to each person, and again, what you see initially is the group maybe isn't singing very robustly, or they're not singing with a lot of expression. But as it goes on and on, their voices raise, and they become just absolutely engaged with the experience. After that singing, then we may do a similar thing with a Bible verse. after the Bible verse. We may do a similar thing with the Lord's Prayer. We've worked with people who on the face of it appear unresponsive, and by the end of this 15 or 20 minute service they're just alive. I worked with a man in Detroit who had become so alert by the end of the service, and he held my hands and he said, "Am I in heaven now? This seems like heaven." And this was a fellow who, we didn't believe who could talk. And I could share probably 100 experiences like that, but I won't. I will just say that reformatting the religious service has allowed us to help people connected with their faith. The key message during your visits is to go beyond visiting and connect. Do connect with the person, and do help them connect with their faith and the rituals that have brought them so much comfort over the years and will continue to bring them comfort long, long into the Alzheimer's disease process.